Hi, I'm Kenneth Wajda. I'm a professional photographer here in Colorado. Welcome to another one of my photography talks. So I want to talk about photographer. I recently picked up a book by Duane Michals, and I really didn't know who he was. I kind of heard the name. I may have been confusing that name with somebody else, I think. And the book is fascinating. He created little movies with photographs. He literally created scenes that he cast people in or himself in. And he often would write on the bottom of the photographs. And I know I do that myself sometimes. And I'm fascinated by the fact that he is able to bring his vision and fiction to life with photographs. They're almost like small little movies. And I'll put a link to his work below. But have you found him? Have you experienced his work? There's a photograph called, I may have the title not exactly right, but it's like, this photograph is my proof. And it's proof. Well, I won't even tell you what it is because it's such a powerful photograph and it's such a powerful set of words below it that if you haven't seen it, I'll let you see it for the first time in its totality because that's the way I saw it. And it was just like so amazing. And I felt like it was so strong. And I can completely relate to it. Like I said, I make work like that and I write on photographs like that sometimes. So I feel like he's such a wonderful discovery for me to find. And the photographs, he's strong into black and white. He shot on film back in the 60s and he was using a lot of, you know what he's using? He was using an Argus C3. It's that brick camera. And the only reason he was using it is because you could set the shutter and then shoot it and then reset it and shoot it again without winding, and there was no problem doing double exposures. And he said he didn't know of another camera that he could get double exposures from so easily, like an Argus C3. Now, if you're talking about, here's an art photographer who's doing incredible work. His work is in museums and in galleries and collected and in books. And he was shooting with an Argus C3. Who are we to like ever say, well, we don't have the right equipment? If you don't know the Argus C3, look it up. I'll put a link into the show notes about it below. And that's one of those cameras that it literally is the shape of a brick. It's an American-made camera with a 53.5 lens. It's not considered one of the greatest cameras ever made. It was probably $20 back when it came out, while the Leicas were a few hundred. And it's still $20. You can buy one most days of the week at antique stores and thrift stores for 20 bucks. And it's got a perfectly fine 50 millimeter 3.5 lens. That's what he was shooting with. But it goes back to, it's not about the camera. It's about the story. There's not, I am pretty sure, there's not a camera that you can buy or I can buy that would make our photography any better. An extra couple megapixels, extra couple zones of focus and more lights lighting up inside this viewfinder. None of it matters. It only matters what you come up with and what you create. And if you're using a primitive camera that's got that double exposure mode like he was, that's what's important because that can accomplish his vision. I'm fascinated by the idea that it's not about equipment. It's always about story. It's always about your vision for what you can make it. And he did it so well. And like I said, it's one of those discoveries that I'm really happy to have found because I really feel like I connect with that kind of work. And I'll put a link to some of my favorite photos from him in the show notes below. And I really would love to hear what you think. And are you familiar with him? I've met and studied many photographers over the years, and I've always felt like, I've had a pretty good sense of who's out there and who's doing what work. And that was a name I really didn't know. And it was like a treat to find somebody new. And if there's anybody that you hadn't heard of before and you recently found out, I'd like to hear that too. It's always like sometimes it's hard to get a new discovery when you're in a profession that you're always surrounded with photographers and other photographers talking about photographers, and they often talk about the same people, the Cartier-Bresson, the Elliot Erowitz, and you hear the same names over and over. I talk about Sally Mann and William Eggleston and Stephen Shore. All those are so well known. Well, so is Duane Michals, but I just didn't know who he was. And that was a fun discovery this time to get to see some of those images. And they're so different than so many other things. They're not street. They're completely created from his own vision. He said, okay, I want to do a photo with this and this and this, so I'll set it in this room and I'll get this person here. And it's completely cast and created. And it's a fascinating thing. I feel like they're little movies or little stories. And he originated them in a single frame. All right, that's today's photography talk. If you're enjoying these, hit the subscribe button. If you can support, hit the Patreon. And thanks so much for watching. I'll bring you more photography talks, and here's the good light.